Malaysia bagaikan sebuah rumah yang unik dan tersendiri, mengerti bahwa semuanya ada. Satu-satunya negara yang mempunyai tanah di benua Asia dan juga di gugusan Kepulauan Melayu. Hanya di negara ini terdapat ramai penduduk yang mempunyai akar bumi daripada dua kawanan berseluruh dunia, yaitu India dan China. Bangsa Melayu pula mempunyai budaya yang sama dengan budaya di Nusantara ini. Agama Islam membuka ruang dan pintu kepada dunia Islam, manakala legasi British membuka pintu kepada dunia Barat. Indonesia unik mana di dunia ini. Malaysia juga sebuah negara kepelbagaian, berbagai kaum, berbagai bahasa, berbagai agama, berbagai budaya, berbagai dewan, perniagaan, berbagai parti berasaskan pergaulan, berbagai wadah semua makanan, berbagai kerajaan, satu kerajaan persekutuan, 13 kerajaan negeri, dan juga berbagai raja. Terdapat 9 daripada 35 monarki dunia berada di Indonesia. Malaysia juga mempunyai ruang waktu besar dengan 3.5 kilometer di Putrajaya, bukan sahaja. Jadi, keunikan Malaysia ini bukan sahaja truly Asia, tetapi truly world. Korupsi yang maras dalam ini terperangkap dari orang Tiongkok, kebergantungan kepada pekerja asing yang melampau, pendapatan rendah, tertekan dengan kos hidup yang tinggi, dan majoriti rakyat Malaysia hanya boleh survive tidak lebih sebulan jika kehilangan kerja. Yang paling menyedihkan di setiap sudut jalan, di dinding-dinding terdapat iklan dibunuh, mengubah lok dan mengubah. Very sad. But are we doomed to fail? Sekiranya sejarah mengajar sesuatu yang mustahil, orang Mongol yang betul-betul menakluk 2/3 dunia, orang Jepun yang mengalah menjadi raja selepas revolusi Meiji, orang Vietnam juga menghalau Perancis dan yang negara-negara mereka. Tiada yang mustahil. Jadi bagaimana atas tujuan bumi ini senarai hasrat sekali untuk Malaysia yang lebih baik ialah perubahan sistem konsultasi negara dulu, mengusahakan si masuk yang lebih baik, hentikan pertelingkahan rutiniah kerajaan persekutuan kerajaan negeri, pembentukan asas ekonomi tukar daripada rentier kapitalisme kepada industrial teknokapitalisme, dasar yang mengutamakan rakyat dengan mengagungkan prinsip keadilan sosial, usahawan dengan added value demokrasi kapitalisme, menggunakan perang terhadap jumlah kekayaan dan pendapatan, sekolah rendah asrama penuh, perumahan mobil, jadikan sektor tenaga, pembinaan dengan mudah, dan pembangunan sistem lebih green dan efisien. Tidak baik dan seimbang dan yang cukup, bukan keluarga kecil. Untuk keluarga seimbang, pemerkasaan wanita, pendidikan yang inklusif, penilaian sembilan falsafah pendidikan negara, gantikan dengan love medical, penjagaan kesihatan yang mampu milik, lebih hospital dan hospital harian, serta klinik yang sebelengkap, kalau kesukarelawanan pihak ketiga bagi memperkasa tugas. Tapi urus yang baik seperti integriti dengan kedewasaan umum, media yang perkasa dan whistleblower yang berani, demokrasi aktif dan inklusif, bukan hanya bawa diri mentapaskan, paling penting hentikan politik perkawanan dan kebencian. Jadi sekarang pilihan kita mau jadikan keberbagai kita satu kelemahan atau satu kekuatan. With the Malaysia, where do we go from here? This is your choice. Pilihan di mana? Satu soal mungkin dari kesalahan, dua soal mungkin ada getaran sekecil, tetapi kalau seribu soal akan halilintar yang boleh melalui tidak putra saya.
Okay, so I hope you guys took some notes from the video just now, because those are some of the pointers that you guys will be discussing about in your groups later, about the feasibility of it and how you can and how you can achieve it, and as a youth of today, how we can achieve it for the future generation of Malaysia. by the year 2050. So, now I'll pass on to Anas for the first topic of the day, the future education of Malaysia. Anas, over to you.
Hello. Can you hear me? Testing, 1, 2, 3. Testing, 1, 2, 3. Hello. Okay. Good morning. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Can you hear me? Okay. Australian student will be more noisy, but I cannot do anything, so.
Can you, Anas?
You can hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, first thank you for having me. I cannot see your faces, it's a bit far. You can hear me, yeah?
Yeah, we can hear you. Anas?
Okay.
Loud and clear.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you to the MC for doing a generous introduction. I'm normally called simply Anas, or some friends would call Dr. A. So today we are going to talk about the future of education. I've seen the outline provided by the organizer, and before we go there, I want to share a finding by George Lamb. He did a study. So what he does is he protected a sample of children aged 5 years old. So what he did was he pressed 5 years old if they are genius or creative. So the result found that 58% of these children are geniuses. 5 years later, he did the same test to this 5 years old, which has already 10 years old. The result is different. From 98% geniuses, number dropped to a whopping 30%. And then it gets worse. 5 years later, he did the same test to the same group of children, and the result is only 12%. And if now, today, if we are going to test you, chances are the result will be 2%. It's worse than that. It's world average. If you test adult anywhere, only 2% are geniuses. So, the question now is, what went wrong? How can the number drop from 98% to 2%? What went wrong? What happened? What happened between the age of 5 to adulthood? What happened? What do we went through FIFA? So, a cynic will quickly answer, we went to school, or we went to Australian university. But let's not say that and try to understand it more. So, when we go out, experience new things, we meet more people, we have environment, we have our parents and everything. We watch series, we watch Game of Thrones. Uh, but how come this number goes down that bad? I want to share also with you on neuroplasticity. Scientists now discovered that our brain, our human brain, is elastic and can be very flexible. Neuroscientists describe that our brain capability to biologically adapt to changes and new knowledge we call neuroplasticity. So, neuroplasticity allows us to learn new things, new characters, and also adjust situations where necessary. Thus, any normal and healthy individual should theoretically be able to become clever. Anyone can become clever as long as they are allowed access to this new knowledge and experience. I've also seen some TED talk on the subject, neuroplasticity. So now question is again, when we go to school, did we do justice to neuroplasticity? Or rather we inhibit progress to humans' intellectual development by limiting humans to potential? You can see that children are humans. They can learn everything very fast. And they are like sponge. You dip children in fresh spring water or in murky water, children will absorb it. Because self-learning in human is innate. So, again, what happened to the geniuses? You might be wondering why I am talking about all this geniuses and then talking about neuroplasticity, and I will touch on future of education, because it's important to understand this concept. It's important to understand what happened. By understanding that, we will be able to have the basic understanding of education and how to do it. I would also like to share another interesting revelation about school. As you can see throughout history, there are various institutions of education. If you can see in Islam, we have our Prophet that was going to now modern day Germany. So in 1760, if you remember our history, in Europe, people are starting to overthrow their emperors. We have the French Revolution, we have many emperors being overthrown when they started to change their system from monarchy to republic or democracy. So the king of Russia feel this threat. So what the king of Russia did in 1760 is that he introduced school to shape the public mind into being docile and obedient to his rule. So it's pretty much brainwashing. He made the school compulsory, free, and make everybody to attend to brainwash the students to becoming docile and obedient to the Russian king rule. And not long after that, Napoleon embraced this concept 50 years later. And in his very own words, he said, I want to create an educational body that will steer the way the French people think. So the same concept of school, the same concept of indoctrination, brainwashing, was the main objective of the formation of police school. And this same concept was adopted throughout the world, throughout everywhere. So, school was the place to teach basic reading, writing, and simple arithmetic skill. On top of that, school was used to ensure that despot rulers stay in power, as in Russia. The schools introduced in Russia, where you have certain timetable, certain set of syllabus, and you divide the classes by age, are the same school that now you see, not the political school. That is why in my book I've mentioned that the early intention of the formation of school is a betrayal to the word education itself. Its main goals were to deplete the human mind, imprison them, and train them to be homogeneous, effective, and cheap factory workers since the Industrial Revolution. It was designed to mold people into becoming submissive servants, and up to today it still does, arguably in subtle ways. Schools today see children being told to memorize answers and solutions to problems, and subscribe to the idea of success that is defined by winning over others, paper qualification, and dollars and cents. The reason I'm explaining where school comes from, where about neuroplasticity and everything, is because there is a crucial, fundamental, philosophical problem in the education itself. And until we fix this problem, until we understand it, whatever tool you use doesn't make any difference. I mean, I can be speaking in front of you now. I can take Asia, fly to Australia, and talk directly to you, or use Skype, like what we are doing now. But if the philosophy is the same, it doesn't make any difference. So that's why I'm going a bit on the background of education and philosophy to try to give you some ideas how education has evolved. So what do we need to do now? First, one of the few ideas that we should be looking at is teaching versus learning. As we can see, education has always hold to the philosophical concept teaching. Teaching is about conveying, imparting, and telling of information and facts. So the way education is delivered, we teachers treat their students like a piggy bank. We put coins inside, we put information inside, and then when the examination time, we just take the feedback and expect you to be able to answer everything. What we should be doing is learning. It's not teaching. We have to show students how to discover, how to encourage, how to provoke, how to nurture. It has always been about teaching pedagogy. It should be about learning pedagogy. Because learning involves failure and making mistakes. Things that the education system dictates no longer seem to tolerate. Similarly, there is a litany of words used to describe teaching, such as pedagogy and anthropology. But synonyms for learning exist not in the same abundance. We have always been trying to produce skilled teachers, But what about kid learner? I always tell people, when you go to the university, you pick up a specialist skill set, like you become an engineer or you become a doctor. And the most important skill set you are supposed to become is to become a skilled learner. You go to university, you have 5 subjects in one semester. Every book is 200 pages. This is not including your reference book, maybe thousands of pages. So the university is teaching you how to learn on your own, on a short period of time. And that's what we should be doing. That's why Albert Einstein had said, I never teach my pupils. I only provide conditions in which they live. So, just earlier I mentioned about plasticity, neuroplasticity. We've seen philosophers like Foucault, Immanuel Kant, Paulo Freire have mentioned that education should not act as information transferring to the masses. Because if this were the case, children could then be considered as the most educated, because children can absorb many information. The products that we should be producing are not children that are good at answering quizzes, not adult citizens with problem-solving skills, innovation, and human compassion. So today we have to make a call to rethink education, because it is vital to ensure that neuroplasticity of the brain is fully capitalized and translated into the outcomes from the school-going time. Children must no longer be based on resulting education material, rather be made involved in the process of reaching those conclusions and attaining those materials. And educators, governing authorities, and students like yourself, undergraduate students, must call for a shift of focus for the school. Now is the time to move towards equipping children with tools of freedom through critical thinking, self-induced intellect, self-reliance, cooperation, and compassion for others. I also want to always remember, like Malik bin Nabi have always said that school need to humanize humans. I give you one simple example. When I was with Teach for the Need, we went to many schools, and we discovered that 10% of students in every school are illiterate. It is quite saddening. Standard 6 students, and we are talking about school in Kuala Lumpur, in Bangsa, in Kepong, in Klang. You go anywhere, 12 years old, 10% will be illiterate. What happened? So they went into standard 1, they didn't perform. They go into the lower ranking classes, the lower ranking class, all the way until standard 6. And when they reach standard 6, the whole classroom cannot. So there is a problem that is very persistent there. I am a secretary for the Malaysian Oil and Gas Services Council. I sit in one of the working group. It's called Technology Innovation Working Group. So we're supposed to be looking at that new innovation for the industry for oil and gas. But technology can bring much on the plate, but it won't change the fundamental problem of the situation. Another example is that on economy, if you all follow economic conferences, you would realize that nowadays the major disruption to economy is technology. because it's unpredictable. Suddenly Facebook enlisting and become a 50 billion company. You cannot predict technology, but what you can predict is preparing fundamental, strong fundamental to support your education and learning. As you're aware of the PISA result, the past 12 years we have seen how PISA team and our ranking in the United Nations education has been declining. We have been going down, and we are now bottom third the world. So if we do not change the way education is delivered, we will be facing serious problems. I have also in the book written about the love pedagogy. There is an empirical study that makes research. So what they do is they study a country's philosophy of education. For example, they go to Korea and then they found out what Korea's philosophy of education. And in America is practical. In Korea is following Confucius teachings. And then when they go to Malaysia, our philosophy of education, to me, I find it to be very long and is very broad. So when we know our way, we will be able to maximize its impact and its outcome because we have fixed the fundamental inherent problems that is facing our education. So maybe I open for questions. It's a bit difficult to be talking all alone by myself, you know.
Okay, so guys, if you guys have any questions,
I'm not sure if you're following me or not.
yeah, you guys can use this
Yep.
just so he can hear you.
So we'll open questions to the floor, as well as you can submit your questions through the QR code and the link on your table.
Okay, so I have a question for you, Mr. Anas. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, cool. You said that we need to sort of change the philosophy of education of Malaysia in a certain way. You said that the current philosophy, the Malaysian education philosophy, is very vague and very general, if that was your word. My question is, what is the importance of education to you? How significant is it in terms of transforming the philosophy or using the philosophy to transform education? So what is the importance of education to you? And how significant is education in transforming the generation in terms of the brain elasticity? Thank you.
Thank you for the question.
What is the importance of education to you?
Is there any more question or we should start now? Oh, okay, what's the importance of education?
I think we'll answer the questions one by one.
Okay, thank you for the question. To me, as a someone who studied socio-economy, energy, I have been looking at many angles, and I found that it might sound cliche, but I found that education is still the answer to all social, to all economical problems in the country and also in the world. I give you a simple example. During the Meiji Revolution, Japan spent 3 times more than Europe for literacy. As a result, you can see how fast the Japanese Meiji Revolution went on. And if you are not aware, the Japanese used to be drunken, lazy farmers. And you heard how Mahathir last time said that Melayu malas. The Japanese was the same. So you can change a country, you can change certain people through education. Another example would be China and India. If you see 30 years ago, China literacy rate is very high compared to India. That's why economically, China now today is able to translate their education success into economy, as opposed as India, which is behind. And all this boils down to education and literacy. Another example would be America. During World War II, they spent money on free education. And you can see how the result on economy, on the culture, is 10 years down the road is very high. So, to me, education is very important. And I believe education is the biggest key to solving almost all problems that every nation is facing. And with the question of philosophy of education, you see, the education philosophy is the fundamental plan, the fundamental core. Any changes to the philosophy of education would be translated into the syllabus, would be translated into the way the teachers think, would be translated into the way how the ministry run everything, and then translated to how things are being done in education in the country. Everything starts from the philosophy. Like, if you change the philosophy, it will have a direct result on the education outcome. That is the study that this research has done. And the research found that if the philosophy of education is fixed, like in Malaysia, the philosophy at the moment is we want to broaden the potential of individuals holistically to create a human being that is balanced, harmonized, intellectual, emotional, physically, so that Malaysians are knowledgeable, morally virtuous, responsible, presentable, skilled, able to attain self-harmony and contribute to the well-being of his family, community, and nation. I find it very broad, very big. So it's very difficult to focus as opposed to other national philosophy of education.
Hello. Thank you for your answer. That answers your question.
Thank you so much. Actually, I still don't quite get the point of why are you comparing Malaysian philosophy to researchers from other countries. I mean, what is the Malaysian philosophy that we are trying to aim for? I'm still looking for the answer. Sorry I didn't make that clear. But that's okay, because there's a few different questions coming up. So thank you.
Okay, the next question is by... Oh, it's anonymous. Should TN50 include vernacular schools? Can you hear me?
Hello?
Hi. The next question by our participant is, should TN50 include vernacular schools?
Okay, to me, I always believe that if we can have school that caters for everybody's need, will be the best way to move forward. And then we have these questions, why do, this is a very long discussion. Actually, we have to go all the way back before independence and nothing today. But for me, the only way we can move forward is to have schools that will provide access and this is big to provide solutions for all our students. So, the NPT for 2050 each should have schools that is what every citizen's requirement needs. And just now, the question, if I didn't get to reply properly on the philosophy, maybe I can email Afifa after this.
Okay, that would be good. Our next question is,
And I really need to ask questions. So, you have to ask questions. Because when you have questions, you have doubt, and then you have solid answer for yourself. You don't even have to read your textbook, and you can answer everything. Because you've asked enough questions, and your mind is critical enough to know what is wrong and what is right. Another example, when you go to election mode, what happened during election? You have information form. The government will put all information on your face. And then the opposition will put all the information on your face. We doing this, we doing this, we doing.
Good day, guys. Sorry I can't be there, but I'm glad that you guys chose University of Queensland, where I graduated. So you guys definitely made the right choice to choose UQ. Having said that, though, I hope that you guys have a very fruitful and thought-provoking day. Even though I can't be there, I hope that this video helps to stimulate some thoughts, but also some ideas as well, as you guys go on to have a discourse or discussion around how do you guys as young people of Malaysia or a global citizen of youth start thinking about how we can co-design a future that we want to see. So today I'm going to talk to you about designing the future of our education with the context specifically towards Malaysia. And also give you a brief context as well where we come from. So you guys may know already, I'm Ihon Chan from MAGIC, Malaysian Global Innovation and Creativity Center. MAGIC is a government agency under the Ministry of Finance launched by President Obama and our Prime Minister in 2014. And since then, we've gone on to promote creativity and innovation amongst entrepreneurs, especially to create more new innovation and commercialization of new ideas as well. And our goal really is to make Malaysia the leading hub for creativity and innovation for entrepreneurs. So before we start, let's look at where we're at in terms of education. Malaysia has actually achieved a lot of brilliant accomplishment, and the government as well has put in a lot of investment to ensure that education in Malaysia is as amazing as it can be. So in terms of just looking at one of the key index or key KPI set by the United Nations in terms of the Millennium Development Goals, before it was replaced by the Sustainable Development Goals, in terms of achieving universal primary education, In terms of net enrollment ratio in primary education, we went from 84.8% in 1970, which is already quite an amazing achievement, especially considering back in the days, just in terms of getting kids to school and getting schools in areas that's needed is a challenge in itself. By 2000, we're almost at 100%. Proportion of students completing primary education is also close to 100% by the time it was 2014. And in terms of literacy amongst 15 to 24-year-old, by 2000 we're also already almost at 100%. Obviously today those numbers are way beyond that, and you know the Millennium Development Goals was set to be achieved by 2000, and the fact that we have managed to achieve a lot of those way before it is a tremendous achievement. On top of that, just in terms of investment in education system, Malaysia has actually put in a huge amount of investment to ensure that education in Malaysia is as strong as it can be. We spend on average about 15 to 20% over the last several decades of our national expenditure in ensuring the education system is as efficient and as effective as it can be. In fact, even from the beginning when Malaysia set out its Malaysian plan, the Rancangan Malaysia, it was already built in place that every subsequent Malaysia plan has a huge strategic plan around how we invest in our education, how do we build our education system to ensure that we not only is able to provide universal education, but ensuring that our education is the best quality that it can be. And then in 2013, the government came out and launched the National Education Blueprint, the Malaysia Education Blueprint, which took the entire country by storm. Everyone thought that it was one of the most brilliant, well thought out way of moving forward in terms of how we can shift our education to really adapt to the future of where a lot of things are moving towards. However, having said that, though, there are a lot of things that we are not only concerned about, but see it as opportunities for change as well. When you look at jobs, we know that jobs are decreasing and there's a huge amount of unemployment. A lot of jobs today didn't even exist before, even this several years before those jobs don't exist. And we're seeing jobs changing rather quickly as well. Even jobs next year might be different to jobs this year as well. So how do you equip young people to be able to adapt to these jobs that don't exist yet? Or how do we create talent to be able to match to these job opportunities that's starting to arise as a result of changing regulation, changing technological advancement, and all these new technologies as well? On top of that, we're also seeing this Industrial Revolution 4.0, which has been defined by the World Economic Forum as a mashup between this cyber-physical environment or world where people don't see the clear line between what is a cyber world and what is a physical world. The Internet of Things, machine learning, artificial intelligence, virtual reality, all these new technologies and emerging technologies are going to be a part of the value chain for pretty much every industry out there. This creates a hugely democratized industry where everyone can now get involved in helping these various industries innovate, because previously when each industries are its own key pillar, these industries, generally speaking, if you want to enter the industry to even get a significant market capture, you need a huge amount of capital. But today you see business models that is changing all of that. Airbnb is now one of the largest accommodation company. They don't own a single accommodation. Whereas back then, to achieve the scale of Airbnb in terms of number of rooms to be rented out and the revenue or the valuation itself, you have to spend huge amount of capital to buy buildings and renovate buildings before you can even open a hotel. We look at Grab, which is now valued at I think 4-point-something billion US dollars, and one of the largest transportation or logistic company in Asia Pacific, if not Southeast Asia right now. And this company don't own a single taxi. Whereas before this, you have to look at licensing and having enough capital to buy all these assets in the first place. So things are shifting, business models are shifting. And with all this new emerging technology and new technologies, we're going to see a hugely disrupted industries, but more so as well shifting opportunities, especially around jobs, from the typical hard skills application of skills kind of job to more about creativity and innovation. How do you apply new ideas into your existing value chain to help your company innovate? How do you start businesses that can help bring traditional industries into the future? And that's where a lot of things that we have to start considering as well. So with that, what will Malaysia look like in 2050? And that's a discourse that the Prime Minister announced last year during the budget and invited young Malaysians especially to say, hey, you know what? 2050 is just around the corner. It's roughly about 30 years from now. 30 years from now, yeah. And we need to start thinking about what this 30 years is going to look like. Where do we want to be at the end of this 30 years so that we can start co-designing or designing it to a certain extent where we can to make sure that by 2050, we are prepared for whatever happens then. And we can be the top 20 countries in the world in terms of innovation, happiness, and our GDP as well. And education is a very important pillar of this TN50 imagining process. And it's been brilliant because a lot of these new ideas as well as this way forward, it comes from the grassroots itself, inviting everyday Malaysians to not only think about the future and where we need to be, but also think of the gaps that we're currently facing so that we can start fixing and bridging these gaps as well, ensuring that the inequality or inequity within education, within our economy and so on and so forth is not enlarging or not too large, but we're able to at least either maintain it or bring it as close as possible. The other thing that we should be very excited about as well is that when you look at economic growth, Danny Kwah, who's an economist and researcher at the London School of Economics, plot out a world map and also look at economic growth trends over the years. And it has shifted very much from the west towards the eastern countries. And in fact, there's a prediction by 2050, a lot of this economic growth around the world is going to happen in this hotspot of Asian region. Right now, the majority of it is still in China and India, but we're seeing ASEAN countries also increasing its GDP quite significantly. As a group of ASEAN itself, although relatively speaking, each country within ASEAN are not giant countries, but as a combined ASEAN, we're the fourth largest economy in the world. And given our current rate, we can easily go to the third and second biggest economies in the world as well. So how do we tap into this economic growth that's shifting towards our region and ensuring that we are not losing out in tapping into this growth that will create a new market altogether, that will help us create purchasing power in a different manner as well, in a different way. And these are things that we have to start thinking about and start designing our various system and our various ecosystem as well to ensure that we're prepared to tap into and leverage on this growth trend. So with all these changes, right, the landscape of businesses, the landscape of jobs, and the landscape of employment in the future are going to look very different. Talent is going to be mobile. People are going to move across borders more fluidly, right? People are going to need skills that's different to what you're taught at schools or in universities as well. The soft skills may come in even more important. Creativity, innovation, all these softer skills are what's going to be the capital, or what we call cognitive capital, that's much needed to ensure that we are able to bring our country to be the top 20 and compete in that top 20 ranking in the entire world by 2050. And a lot of this innovation are already starting to happen, and it's just that it's not widely distributed yet. People often say that, the future is still so far ahead, why are we so worried about it? But the fact that if we don't start looking at where the future can go, we can't ensure that our system and our people are prepared to tap into these opportunities brought by these new and emerging new technologies. Google Home and Amazon Echo is just an example where something that people think is going to be a future thing is now an everyday household item. In Cyberjaya alone, I know a few of my neighbors already have these things at home to and make life so much easier. Autonomous transportation system, and we hear this a lot in the US, but it's also coming to ASEAN countries as well. Singapore has already signed up to ensure that autonomous car or autonomous transportation is going to replace a lot of their existing public transport system. And in Malaysia, in Magic alone, we're now working with other corporations to also look at how we can use machine learning or even automation and apply that to the industry. For example, we're working with Bandar Sunway Ventures to look at how can we create autonomous public transportation system for Bandar Sawit itself, working with startups who have all this solution for this already. So where are we at in terms of this top 20 ranking in the world by 2050? So in terms of GDP wise, we still are way far behind at the 60th place around the world. We're 47th in the world in terms of Earth Happiness Index. We're 35th in the world in terms of the World Innovation Index. However, what's really key here is not to look at just where we are at, but the trends also the last few years. Malaysia has slowly climbed up the ranking in terms of these various indicators of where we're at. In terms of GDP, we maintain a fairly stable GDP growth at around 4.5 to about 5% in terms of GDP, and even though the rest of the world are struggling with oil price slump and various other reduction in the economy's indicators, but Malaysia has remained quite competitive in that sense. Happiness comes back down to our sense of community, our sense of belonging. Do we have ownership of our culture and our identity as not only Malaysian but also an ASEAN citizen as well? And beyond all of that as well is our living. What's the word for it? What's our condition of living as well? Do we have access to basic human rights and basic things that we need? But beyond that as well, do we feel optimistic? Do we feel like our aspiration is practical? Do we have that space to be able to imagine and be able to feel confident enough to achieve what our vision of the future could be? This all comes down to, this all contributes towards the happiness index. In terms of innovation, it's a very complex way of measuring the index itself, but just to take a few in terms of IP, in terms of entrepreneurship, in terms of commercialization of these IPs, in terms of education, our education system, how efficient is our education system, and the output and outcome of our education system as well, are just some of the indicators in measuring our innovation index and things that we can look into. So how do we then create a future-proof education system to ensure that by 2050 we're able to achieve this vision that we want to achieve, which is to be the top 20 in the entire world in terms of our GDP, in terms of which means our economy, in terms of our people's happiness, our people's sense of belonging and sense of identity as well as our innovation index, where we're able to come up with new ideas constantly. And all of this are actually not separate indicators. These are all connected and linked to each other. Every time we shift a needle within one of this, we will shift the needle on the other as well. The multiplier effect or the effects of our influence across this is important. Hence, every little things really matter. And TN50, to achieve TN50 is not the job of only the government or only the corporate sector or only the social sector. It's actually a vision that every single Malaysian must hold on to and own as well. Because ultimately, we're the one who's going to inherit this planet and this country as well. The economy is going to be ours to ensure that it's competitive. The happiness of our people comes right down to our everyday action and our everyday contribution back to our local community that makes a difference. And innovation are driven by people, and it comes back down to the citizen of Malaysia as well. And young people especially, the ones who is inheriting and going to be the one leading Malaysia into the 2050 vision is what is and makes our role and responsibility as young people even more important. And we're starting to see that as already. So how do we create future-oriented learners? How do we create young people who never stop learning and is able to pick up new skills and new ways of doing things fast beyond the traditional and structured way of education? That's an important part of that. How do we create curiosity? How do we create inquisitive mind amongst our young Malaysians? How do we create higher order thinking? How do we promote creative thinking and also critical thinking amongst young Malaysians to ensure that our young people not only focus on the grades and the various indicators that the education system impose on the students, but they think about how they can use the basic fundamentals of education to learn new things as new emerging technology and new innovation comes along, so that they can also compete and participate in those future. Just to give you an example, this car is a typical Proton Wajah, but 3 young Malaysians started Reka Studio and hack into this car and make it an automated car that drove itself from Malacca to KL itself. All they did was cut the wires from the cars, plug it into a laptop, created a software that's able to then tap into satellite imaging, be able to scan the area where the car is moving as well in a very quick pace to ensure that the car knows where is road and where is not road so they don't go there. And that's where this car then is able to drive from Malacca all the way to KL. In fact, they even stopped at a drive-through McDonald's as well on the way. How do we create young people who are enterprising change makers? Young people who see social problems or any kind of problems, and their immediate reaction is not to shift blame or to say that, oh, that's so-and-so's fault. But whenever they see when they see problems, they see opportunities for them to do something, for them to start an enterprise, to solve the problem, to use their creativity and the higher order thinking to come up with a solution that they can commercialize and be able to replicate it across the country and potentially across the world as well. Just to give an example, the Picha project started by 3 young Malaysians who weren't even graduated when they started the Picha project. It's a typical catering company that provides financial empowerment to marginalized groups. So what they do is they work with communities or families who are in the B40 range, so they are marginalized and at risk, and they also then work with people who needs food. So they train these marginalized communities to prepare delicious, amazing meals, and when they receive orders from these various corporates or SMEs or government or anyone really, they're able to then place the order with these families and deliver this food to these guys who made the order. And in that process, they also split the income between them as well as these marginalized communities. So what happened is that these young girls saw an opportunity where everyone can cook, and there's all these companies who are constantly catering, including Magic. And what they did was just to build a platform that bridged these poor people who can cook, but also these companies who need food, and be able and created a company out of it. Today they're about 1 year and 3 months old, and they're doing very, very well, and have won numerous awards as well for their achievements. So these are just a few examples. How do we also create young people who is able to tap into opportunities that new emerging technologies brings along? How do we create young people who think creatively, connecting the dots of various trends and various new things that's happening around us, and be able to then create businesses or opportunities, not only for themselves, but people around them as well? Transforming industries, creating new opportunities for new industries to innovate, whether it's healthcare, finance, education, and so on and so forth. And the opportunities are endless. So this is where we need to start thinking about our education system beyond just the output of the students itself, but really also looking at the quality of our education, looking at how do we make education, the delivery of education, more efficient. How do we look at ensuring that we don't look at our students as a group of people, a homogeneous group, but each of them are individual, remarkable and brilliant people that has cognitive capital that needs to be unleashed. And every time we unleash the brilliance of just one person, it has a multiplier and influence effect over several others around them as well. And that is where we need to start thinking beyond just the hard core system part, but really looking into it as well. How do we create the quality, the efficiency, and the effectiveness of our education beyond just traditional education system alone? So at Magic, we want to try to also start promoting creativity and innovation and sparking interest amongst young people as well to think differently, to tap into the opportunities this trend and these new technologies are bringing. And one of the ways that you can get involved is to sign up to one of our courses. We offer various courses in partnership with many of our friends who are experts in their own rights, and we provide these courses either at a subsidized rate or at a rate that's affordable to everyone. The main thing is to shift the mindset of our people, but also then providing them the skills to be able to compete in the future market, whether it's design thinking, blue ocean thinking, and so on and so forth. So this is the link. You're ever in Malaysia and you think there's a course that's suitable for you at the time that you're here, please do sign up as well. So that's it from me, but I think to summarize all of that, the main thing as young people who's going to leave university and go out there and change the world and create opportunities for others to change the world as well. My invitation for you is to start thinking critically in terms of the degree that you're going to earn at the end of this experience. And I call it an experience because oftentimes people see university as just a path towards getting a piece of paper. But I think that the overall experience that you have in university does set you on the right path for the rest of your life. And how you go on to create, unleash the brilliance of yourself and your peers around you, or even the communities around you, once you have this degree, is what's going to bring us into the future. Like I said again, the job of helping Malaysia achieve the top 20 in the world in terms of TN50's vision is not the job of just the government and the corporate, but it's a responsibility of all of us, especially our young people. And I hope that stimulates some thoughts and discourse amongst yourselves over there, and I hope that you guys also have some time as well to discuss what is the way forward. How do we look at some of the issues that we're facing and turn them into opportunities? How do we tap into opportunities that's brought on by new technologies in a hyper-connected world? What would education look like in the future? In a digitally enabled world as well, where boundaries and borders are starting to blur, how do we ensure that we have global citizens amongst everyday young Malaysians so that they can not only compete in a local market but compete in a global market? What are the things that we need to think about to achieve higher order thinking, critical thinking, creative thinking amongst not only our youth but also those who are growing up right now? Those are some questions that I hope you guys will start thinking about as well, and I've given you some examples and hope you guys will continue that discussion. Thank you for having me, and I hope that I'll see some of you guys soon. Thank you.
So this is everyone. So before you start, I'll give a brief introduction about you.
Sure.
So this is our guest speaker, Syed Abdul Rahman. So his topic for today is, does it lead the nation forward? So Syed graduated from IIUM Law School and completed his academic fellowship in Temple University, Philadelphia. He now is offered a fully sponsored spot to further studies in Oxford School of Public Policy. At 22, Sadiq has been crowned the 3-time Best Debater of Asia and served as the Chief Adjudicator of the World Debate Championship. At 23, Sadiq co-founded Parti Pribumi Bersatu Malaysia with Tun Mahathir, Tun Sri Muhyiddin and 4 others. He is now the Youth Chief of Bersatu. Sadiq is part-time lecturer, columnist, and an independent researcher consultant in public policy. So now I'll pass on to you to start your talk. Over to you.
Amazing. Firstly, Assalamualaikum, sejahtera, Nihama Banegam. I'd like to personally apologize for the brief delay. Just now, the flight from Kuala Terengganu was delayed for an hour. Rest assured, usually I'm never ever late. I truly apologize. This is something which is beyond my control. But I mean, it's a pleasure to be able to address all the young intellects in Queensland today. So if I'm not mistaken, it's 30 minutes, right? 30 minutes before Q&A starts? Anyone can answer?
Yes, you have 30 minutes and then about 10 minutes of Q&A.
Sure. Can I just give a suggestion? Is it possible if I only speak for around 20 minutes and then we allocate 20 minutes for Q&A? Because I prefer for there to be more of a dialogue than
That's fine.
short and just continue.
That's fine.
Amazing. Okay, so I will start timing so that I do not go short and speak for more than 20 minutes. Okay. So the topic we have today is on TN50, Transformasi Nasional 50. yang diperkenalkan, which was introduced by Datuk Sri Najib, Prime Minister of Malaysia, a few months ago. So there were a few questions which the organisers gave to me for me to answer, so I'll go and address them one by one. But before I start addressing those questions, again I'd like to thank the organisers for making this talk possible, and I hope that more dialogues like this can happen, and hopefully again, with the advance of technology, maybe dialogues between, for example, a representative of the government and a representative of the opposition together in one Skype forum. That will be particularly interesting. So, the first question which was asked was to describe wawasan 2020 and also TN50, and to look at possible correlations or similarities between wawasan 2020 and TN50, and also differences among them. So firstly, I think I just want to start off by commending the idea of TN50. So the concept of TN50 mirrors wawasan 2020, which was introduced by Dr. Mahathir in 1991 and 1992, which is a forward-thinking or a vision of the nation in the next 20 to 30 years. This is to foolproof Malaysia from changes which will take place, or inevitable changes which will take place, which will impact the lives of average Malaysians. Similarly to wawasan 2020, which was introduced in the 1990s, TN50 is also introduced today to ensure that in the next couple of years, or at least in the next few decades, we will be able to predict what will happen, and Malaysia and Malaysians will be ready to move forward as one collective force. So I think the similarity there is that we are forward-thinking, that we want to come up with a clear vision of the way forward for Malaysia, and we want to future-proof Malaysia from things which is about to come. So there are two key differences which I identify here. The first one, I think, if we look at wawasan 2020 and TN50, wawasan 2020 had like defined goals, or at least like 9 key planks, which will then determine whether we are able to achieve or realize the goals of wawasan 2020. So there are myriad of goals, from achieving the concept of bangsa Malaysia or united Malaysian identity. Itu merupakan cabaran pertama ataupun cabaran utama yang digariskan oleh Dr. Mahathir Mohamad to reaching a high income nation, untuk pastikan bahawa kita hidup antara satu sama lain dengan harmoni. So there are like 9 key objectives, right? In comparison to TN50 ataupun Transformasi Nasional 50, as of now there's still no set goals. Instead, what we were informed, this is more of a bottom-up approach, di mana kita kumpulkan suara rakyat ataupun suara akar umbi, and then from there onward it is translated into more concrete, defined goals and outcomes for Malaysia to achieve. So I think that's like the key difference between wawasan 2020 and TN50. Whether the bottom-up approach is better than wawasan 2020 or vice versa depends on the perception of different people. I think both of them have their own merits. But I think maybe a lot of us, I presume a lot of you here today are those of the same age category as I am, 20, 25, 26, older. I think we distinctly remember wawasan 2020 and what we went through back then, from drawing flying cars and like tall skyscrapers to more modernized kampongs. I remember drawing that. I think we all also defined what wawasan 2020 is to each and every one of us. So in a way, it is also encompassing of the views of the average Malaysian in the creation of wawasan 2020. I think that's the first key difference. The second key difference is the timing of wawasan 2020 and also TN50. So if you look at wawasan 2020 in 1991 and 1992, that was a time in which Malaysia was rapidly industrializing. we went through the phase, we went through the transition phase from becoming an agricultural economy to a more industrialized economy. We became one of Southeast Asia's most successful manufacturing hubs. We were able to pull in investments, not just loans, but job-creating investments, where multi-billionaires or multi-billion worth companies open up their factories here and treat Malaysia as one of the export hubs or centers to export their products to Southeast Asia and Asia. It was a genuinely good time. If I'm not mistaken, even if you look at the increase in income of Malaysia, it almost doubled in a time span of 1 decade. So it was a time of prosperity, it was a time of progress for Malaysia. So I think that's why I think we vividly remember Wawasan Lumpur, because it was a time of prosperity and all of us had a role in making Malaysia, which we were particularly proud of. And then especially for most of us who were in school, again we hear good stories, especially from our parents and grandparents, and therefore the impact was much easily felt. I think comparing it to where we are at now today in 2017, I think this is a challenging time for all Malaysians, and I want to be very clear, I don't want to be too political over here. So I will not comment on political parties, but I'll just comment on specific data or things which have been presented, for example, by Laporan Bank Negara, or the Central Bank report which was released recently, gauging the economic success from 2016 to 2017. So again, I've discussed about the timing in 91 and 92 when Wawasan 2020 was first pushed forward. But if you look today, in 2017, and again, just to ensure that the organizers do not get into trouble, and also you guys do not get into trouble. Again, I'm not blaming anyone or anybody. It might be because of, global changes, or you can say because of global changes. So, if you look today, let's just look from unemployment to those who are employed but with a low quality of living. So if you look at unemployment today, youth unemployment is at a record high, which is at 11%, which is 3 times the national average, or the average of unemployment in Malaysia, which is relatively low, which is around 3.5%. But youth unemployment is 3 times more, and unemployment in general has peaked when we reach more than 500,000 unemployed Malaysians, and is expected to increase to 600,000 by year end. So that's just looking at unemployment. But if we go in more specific data of unemployment, specifically the youth, besides it being 3.5 times higher than the national average, I think looking at unemployment among degree holders, or dalam golongan siswaza atau golongan graduan, 1 out of 4 unemployed young people are those who have a degree. So I mean, it's particularly sad, especially when we look at a lot of degree holders who end up borrowing from PTPTN. Again, they'll end up with an average of 30,000 ringgit Malaysia debt, which they owe to PTPTN. So, firstly, the ability to get a job is already low, and when they do get a job, they are struggled with an average of 30,000 ringgit debt. And beyond that, the point in which they do get employed, and they are one of the lucky ones to get employed, 1 out of 2 of them who ended up getting employed with a degree will earn below 2,000 ringgit. And I think a lot of you know in Malaysia, 2,000 ringgit today is quite difficult. And if you look again at the Laporan Bank Negara, if you look at the increase in income after you include the inflation rate, on average, the increase is only 20 ringgit per annum, after you aggregate with the inflation rate in Malaysia. So, I think it's a very different time. And again, I do not want to pin this down to any political party or to policies, because I think I do not want to get you guys in trouble. But I think it's just a very big difference. That's why I think there's a very different feeling. For example, when we look at Wawasan 2020, with the nostalgia and the time of economic prosperity where we were at before, and where we are at today, right? So I think those are the two key differences which differentiate Wawasan 2020 and TN50. Again, I think both of them have their own merit. So the second question which was asked to answer is on the positives and negatives, or the positive impacts and negative impacts of TN50. So I want to start out by saying I do think there are clear negative impacts of TN50. I mean, I think it's a good idea, it's a good concept, especially if it is driven by youth leaders, which we have seen the appointment of youth ambassadors, even though some are political appointments, but the vast majority are those with merit, those who are talented. For example, from successful business women like Niloufar, who's an iconic figure of his own, to progressive political actors from UMNO, like Sharil Hamdan, ex-co of UMNO. So even though they are political appointees, but they are quite good political appointees, and then they are athletes, they are people from different layers of society who will end up spearheading TN50. So I think that part is generally good and progressive to pull, which may lead to TN50, and also what could potentially, and this I don't want to say that there's a clear, concrete harm, but the more speculative harm or the potential harm which may accrue in the future, I think there are three which I'd like to discuss here. Firstly, if you listen to the first policy speech or keynote speech which introduced TN50, I think there might be some politically hidden agenda behind it. So the first time it was brought forward in a more public platform was during the pembentangan budget in Parliament. Before this, the last presentation of the budget. And when it was presented by Datuk Sri Najib, right before TN50 was brought forward, there were a few key lines which he mentioned, which is more tiba di masa di mana kita tinggalkan legasi yang lama, or putting behind past legacies, time to move forward. So it's a way to signal, Wawasan 2020 is over, it's done. The legacy of the old man is done, and it's time for us to move forward, which I think is slightly odd because we haven't reached Vision 2020 or Wawasan 2020, and we are already one step or 2-3 key steps ahead, even before realizing Wawasan 2020. I do acknowledge the merits behind it. For example, even though we haven't reached what we need to start thinking ahead, but I haven't heard of a vision which is created even before one vision is fulfilled, So I think that's just one part. And again, this is not a harsh criticism, it's just one possible political motive which is behind it. The second part here is to point out that, which is my biggest fear, I don't want this to just be another coffee talk shop in which a lot of discussions happen, but it's not translated into concrete public policy discussions and outcomes. For example, I was in the National Consultative Council on Political Finance. This was 2 years ago, where I was appointed by Minister Paul, the minister in the Prime Minister's department in charge of the integrity portfolio, in which we were tasked to come up with reforming political finance laws in Malaysia. So we have a lot of people. We have people from NGOs, NGIs, we have ministers in the government, key actors. And even after we came up with a comprehensive public policy solution on regulating political finance laws in Malaysia, up until today it's still yet to be implemented. Even after getting the support of the public, going on the ground, talking to different NGOs, and even then, until today, I think it's almost been a year, and we haven't seen progress, or at least an update on that front. And it's not just the National Consultative Council on Political Finance. We see a myriad of other councils, like the National Unity Council, in which they've already presented their solutions on the way forward to Malaysia, and now it's still not translated into public policy outcomes. So I think my fear is that this will be a lot more of talking forums, but less of a, more talk, less action, which is my fear. But again, I'm just talking about fears now because it's still early, so there's still benefit of doubt, and we must still assist the government where it's possible on issues like this. Because I mean, as a debater, I always like to go worst case scenario. What is the worst case scenario? I mean, worst case scenario, even if it will just end up becoming talks and dialogue. I mean, the minimum, bare minimum, at least people can talk. Some government officials will listen, whether they carry out is a different story. But at least people can vent out their frustrations, people can express their vision for a better Malaysia. So I think even bare minimum, I think there's still a net benefit to it, which I think is good. So yeah, I mean, some might say that once you only focus on the future, you forget about the woes and the problems of the present. But I don't think so. I think fellow Malaysians are smart enough to know and to divorce the problems of today with our vision of the future. Similarly, back then when Dr. Mahathir put forth Wawasan 2020, it doesn't mean that people couldn't criticize his administration, for example, as to what happened in 1997 and 98, or to the handling of the financial crisis, or to a myriad of other issues, from ISA and Sedition Act and the rest. Criticisms were still levied, but the Vision 2020 was still alive. So I think Malaysians are smart enough to differentiate the present and the future. So I have 4 more minutes. So that's the second question. So the third one, which I feel more strongly about, is what will Malaysia look like in 2050? What will be the differences in the political scene, the economic scene, and the social scene in Malaysia? So I'm going to go one by one, right? Firstly, in terms of social development when we reach 2050. I mean, I personally believe that by then, Malaysia will be more racially blind than where we are at today. I think by then we will see more diverse national schools coming up, then more race-centric boarding schools and also vernacular schools which exist today. And I don't think this will be more of a bending. Contoh, kita akan harapkan sekolah ni. No, it's not. I think it's a natural progress. As we can see today, for example, in boarding schools, previously it was predominantly confined only to Bumiputras, but I heard even in MRSM today, there's a 10% quota if I'm not mistaken. And if you look at my school, boarding school, the Royal Military College, the promo sekolah sedikit which is the most diverse boarding school in Malaysia. I mean, some of my best friends were Chinese and Indians. I mean, it's a very diverse boarding school. And if you look at the data of vernacular schools today, it is getting more and more diverse. A lot more Malays are entering Chinese vernacular schools. So I think in the future, we will be a more racially blind society, and I think that's generally progressive and something which we must head to. Now, obviously, we must follow the wave. I mean, it's not easy to just break down and then get wiped out. But I think we will get there. So I think that's one part. I think the second part, in terms of econs or economics, right? I think we will be going through the type of automation. Automation has always been there since the 1930s. So for those who follow the industrialization era in the UK in particular, for example, the creation of the spinning jenny, which revolutionized the cotton industry, where it caused mass unemployment in the Western world. But in the long run, this technological advancement led to the decrease in the cost of living, the creation of new technologies. So the spinning jenny, you know, is the macam mesin jahit lah, macam mesin jahit. Dulu kan you need to do all your own, you need to employ a lot of people. Then the spinning jenny creates a lot of cotton very easily. This is one example, and that's back then. And now we are seeing that trend continue today. For example, we see the creation of artificial intelligence, AI, which is a matter of concern because if they can replace the human workforce, that means it may lead to short-term unemployment. But then again, I hope that discussion will take place in Malaysia, it should. But if you look at the Western world, discussion is already taken place there. For example, a group of talented professors have already taken up steps to ensure that we regulate the artificial intelligence industry well. We should not weaponize it, because once we weaponize, then it may be a very big problem because we are not fully in control of them. Or, with the creation of artificial intelligence, we need to tax that industry heavily so that we can create a universal basic income, UBI, if you've heard of it. UBI, universal basic income, so that the money generated by AI can be distributed back to parts of society who genuinely need it. So I think discussions about that have already taken place in the Western world, and I think that discussion should take place in Asian countries, specifically should take place in Malaysia. We see a transition from an oil-based economy to a more green tech or green technology-based industry. And again, we see countries like China moving forward to that path. India, which is one of the biggest producers of solar panels, despite being one of the most highly polluted countries before. I mean, America before this was going the right path by Barack Obama, and now it's like, with the taking up of the Paris Accord, Paris Treaty by Donald Trump, I mean, I don't know lah, tak apa lah, UN dia boleh sikit sekarang. But at least, I mean, Malaysia, we should go on the right path. Finally, we'll talk about what will politics look like then. I mean, the reason I'm particularly enthusiastic of Malaysian politics for our generation, I think it will become a lot more clean, will be more refreshed, and I think that Malaysia then will be a much better place in which politics will be more constructive than disruptive. So I think by then, a change in government would be normalized. And I see this not just a change in government where, for example, Pakatan Harapan Lepas take over Barisan Nasional. I mean, by then, when we take over, then Barisan Nasional will take over us again, and then we will take over. The change in government will be common, but the democratic pillars which hold Malaysians together will remain strong. I think it's quite similar to Australia, for example, where in less than 5 years they can have a change in prime ministership for more than 3 times, change in government a myriad of times, yet the country still remains strong. And then, not just in Australia, in the US, where the Republican takes over, the Democratic Party takes over, and other more developed countries. I think we will reach that path, and it will be good for Malaysia, because despite governments change and people at the top change, democratic pillars are still strong, and the resolve of the people is still strong. And I think that's good because it creates more accountability, it creates more progressive and clean politics in which all parties must compete and must serve the people of Malaysia, because now you can no longer say that you have ruled Malaysia for more than 60 years and you've never lost, and you cannot slip into that position of comfort. Similarly, if opposition takes over, for example, Islamic opinion, we cannot be comfortable because people are used to a change in government. So I think that will be good for Malaysia. And besides that, I think there will be more bipartisan, constructive politics where Barisan Nasional politicians might vote against their leadership in support of, for example, an opposition agenda, or Harapan leaders will also defy their top leadership and vote with Barisan Nasional leadership on specific agenda. I think this level of bipartisanship again is progressive, and we see this in the United States, for example, when Donald Trump wanted to repeal the Affordable Health Care Act, which was brought forward by the Democratic Party and the President Barack Obama. We see more progressive politicians or Republican politicians like John McCain voting it down. So I think in Malaysia we will move down that path. And I think identity politics in particular will get weaker. Race-based politics will get weaker. Religion-based politics will get weaker. And we will transcend to more issue-based politics, where we'll discuss about income inequality. We'll talk about tax rates. For example, not just about GST, but talk about taxing the rich and taxing the poor. Or do we have a progressive tax or regressive tax? We'll talk about education policies in specific. For example, not just talking about nanti kalau MRSM kita buka kepada kaum Melayu, nanti habis hak Melayu. No, we're talking about if we open it up this way, then the educational outcomes or goals will not be realized. So I mean, it will be a lot more issue-centric than identity-centric before. Less on identity politics, but more on class-based politics. I think by 2020, I really hope this can happen, and I think the possibility is still there. I want Malaysia to be a full-fledged developed country. I want us to be included in the G7 nation, one of the top richest nations in the world. I want us to have a strong democratic foundation that despite whoever runs the government, the people are well aware of political issues. The institutions of democracy, like the Malaysian Anti-Corruption Commission, the judiciary, the parliament are all neutral and independent and are empowered enough to hold whoever is in government to account. So I think that's one of the dreams which I want to see. I want to see a Malaysia in which people of different races and religion respect one another. But while we tolerate one another, we do not tolerate intolerance. We do not tolerate bigotry. We do not tolerate sexism. I think slowly we will reach that path. But most importantly, I genuinely want to see a Malaysia in which we no longer just become a follower in the global world. Million Chinese citizens were liberated from the poverty bracket in a 20-year timeline. I think Malaysia can do the same. And it is a lie people say that Malaysia is small, Malaysia is incapable. If countries like Qatar can rapidly develop in 10 years' time, this is slightly a bad example, but I say it anyway. If Israel, a very small country, can strategize and become one of the most influential countries, despite in more insidious ways, can do so, I think Malaysia can do much better. We have smart people. I believe in our system of democracy. I believe in the diverse community which we are in. And I believe not just 2050, but by 2020, if we are able to empower our democratic pillars, free up our media, free up our education, make sure that the greatest potential are rewarded in the best ways possible, I think by then, Malaysia will be one of the best countries in the world. We have done it before, and I believe that we will be able to do it again. Okay, ini macam bebel panjang sangat, so I'll cut it short. I think that's it from me. Thank you very much, and I think let's open up to more Q&A sessions.
Okay.
Minta maaf kalau panjang sangat.
It's okay. Thank you, Sadiq. So thank you for your input on how does TNFT lead the nation forward. So as a recap, so you started with like the differences between Kawasan 2020 and TNFT, the economic climate which it was implemented and the timing, and then you gave positives and negatives of TN50 and where our country is moving forward, and as well as how TN50 can put Malaysia in the right direction. And I think we are relieved and glad to hear that we are moving in the right direction, and hopefully TN50 will continue to ensure that. So now we will open the floor to questions. We have 10 to 15 minutes. So yeah, first question.
Hello, Sadiq. My name is Adam, and
Adam, is it? Sorry.
Adam, yeah. And sorry if I get too political with this, but I'm referring to an article written by you at 20th January 2017 in Malaysia Kini that you said that.
Sorry, can you just repeat, because the line just now went, there's something wrong with the line. Can you repeat the question? Sorry.
I'm just referring to an article written by you on January 2017 in Malaysia Kini that you said that TN50 is just another decoy like One Malaysia, and it's potentially not as successful as One Malaysia. So we can see in Malaysia there are a large portion of people that are too suspicious of TN50 because it's too tied up with political interests and influence from the government. So there are some think tanks that suggest that TN50 should be handled by a third-party non-political commission or Suruhanjaya that are independent and collective. So do you think that giving TN50 to a third-party non-political, inclusive and independent commission can solve the problem of TN50 being tied with political interest?
Thank you very much, Adam. First, I just want to add that that's a brilliant suggestion, and I agree with you wholeheartedly. If I may share, I remember when the concept of TN50 first came up, there was a lengthy article written by Tunku Abidin, which is one of the prince in Negeri Sembilan, and he commented on this as well. He said there are two key improvements which must be made by TN50. Firstly is that the questioning must be unregulated. That means, contoh, if a lot of you watched the first launching of TN50, I think in the questions were staged, and then people cannot ask more hard questions, So I think that's one criticism. The second one was exactly what you pointed out, which is to make it better and to free the perception of TN50 as only one political ploy to win the hearts and minds of young voters coming into PRU 14. It is to place TN50 under a more independent body, not controlled by politicians, the government, nor the opposition, but to put it under a more neutral body. And to be honest, I think that would be a more brilliant idea, and I think that will definitely remove any form of suspicion placed upon the objectives of TN50. That's a brilliant suggestion. Hopefully, this has been proposed by Tunku Abidin, but I think students like yourselves, Adam, bring this up a lot more. I think it will help. And I just want to let's comment the government a little bit. Kena puji tu okay, sambil good parts kita puji. So I think one example to show where they are trying to make it more like that is that now instead of only ministers speaking about TN50, now you see more non-politicians speaking about it. That's why I say people like the Nilofa, athletes also speaking on this issue. So I think that's trying to decouple the politics from the genuine vision of TN50. So I think there have been attempts, but I think it can be much, much, much better, in which TN50 is just no longer placed under YBKJ or Kementerian Belia dan Sukan, but is fully delegated to a different, more independent bodies. I think that's the way forward for Malaysia. But I really like the suggestion. That's a brilliant suggestion.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? You can also upload your questions on the Slido.
Yeah, feel free to ask for anything.
Okay, so this one is by Anonymous. In your opinion, what can we do now as youth in Australia that can contribute to the success of TN50?
Correct me if I'm wrong. The question is, what can Malaysian youth in Australia do to contribute back to Malaysia?
To the success of TN50.
Success of TN50.
Like the students we are here now in Australia. But what can we do to play a role in contributing to TN50 over here in Australia?
Sure. First thing first, I think the fact that you organize or MASPA organize this TN50 forum is one of the ways in which you can help out. But I think one thing which I genuinely believe in, it is a lie if people say young people do not have the power to push for change in which that change will be translated into concrete public policy benefits. Like when I was serving as the temporary special officer to YB Nancy Shukri, who was at the time the de facto Minister of Law, one of the criticisms given to young people, right? Whenever we propose for change, we be like, alasan ni anak muda ni bila diorang ni jerit, tapi bak undi tak ada seorang bak undi. That's an exaggeration lah, but they'll say at least half of you will not vote, so what's the purpose of us trying to win over your vote? Seriously man, but it's just one of the criticisms levied against it. So I think what we can do, for the Malaysian youth in Australia, it's not just about registering as voters. Because once you do, then your voice or your policy suggestion for TN50 will be taken a lot more seriously, because they know it's not just your words, but now your bullets are your voting process. But it's not only about doing that. That's more in the long term when PRU comes. But in the short term, My suggestion is for you, or like, I know there's not just MASPA, there are myriad of other Malaysian organizations in Australia, which are doing really well. I mean, I spoke to Sydney before, also a Malaysian organization there, Melbourne before, there are different Malaysian organizations there. So my suggestion is for you to host a TN50 brainstorming session where the top leaders of respective Malaysian youth organizations in Australia sit down and then come up with like 5 key suggestions, 5 cadangan utama yang sepatutnya dipraktikkan dalam tempoh terdekat ini. And for example, you get like, let me just give random stuff. What are random stuff? Like making sure that that students under scholarship will not be threatened when they become politically active or when they discuss about political issues. That's just one example. I mean, doesn't only have to be about that, or maybe allocating more money towards scholarship holders or to target scholarship. And you have the networking to do so, both networking for the opposition and the government, NGOs, corporate sector, etc. So my suggestion is to do that. Get a list of like 3 key things which you really want to see happen, and then get it down on paper, propose it, and then build up the momentum so that your issue will be a national issue. And I think that will help the N50 and will help all Malaysians.
Thank you for your answer. So the recap is we should voice our concerns even from here so that we will start a dialogue back in Malaysia and so that government officials will respond to our issues as well. Okay, so any more questions from the floor before I move on to the Slido? Any more?
Any question?
Assalamualaikum, Sekali.
Salam.
My name is Adam. Before Adam, now Adam.
Adam, another Adam. Yes, Adam.
I'm referring to your statement that one of the difference between the TN50 and Wawasan 2020 is Wawasan 2020 they already stated the 9 key objective, but for TN50 there are no clear goals about it, and they are prefer bottoms-up approach. For me personally, I really like the bottoms-up approach because maybe you cannot reach the very poor citizens in Malaysia, but then you can go to the poor people and ask them what they want and what they see themselves in 30 years time. I'm not sure why you are not supporting the bottoms-up approach, but for me, I really like that idea. It will take sometimes, like maybe like 1 year or 1.5 years to collect all the data and opinions from the poor villages. But then, yeah, for me, I really like that idea. So why are you not supporting that bottoms-up approach?
Okay, correct me if I'm wrong, Nama kalau salah faham. So you are asking, so you prefer the TN50 bottom-up approach because you gave your reasons.
Yeah.
And then you want me to comment on that.
Yeah, because instead of set their own goals like the 9 key objective, why do we ask them their opinions and collect their opinions, and then after that we make the 9 key objective after that.
Brilliant. Okay, I get it. Okay, so if I may share, so have you seen the first paper on Wawasan 2020? The key goals are actually very broad. For example, untuk ketepikan perbezaan dari segi bangsa dan agama untuk kita bersatu di bawah konsep bangsa Malaysia, ataupun for us to achieve a high income nation, ataupun untuk kembalikan roh rohaniah, saskiah, and that kind of stuff. And if you know all of this, these are ridiculously general and ambiguous. You know, like what do you mean by putting aside racial differences? Like, does that mean abolishing vernacular schools? Does that mean abolishing race-based politics? Does that mean abolishing religious-based politics? You know, like high income nation. You know, like, what does that mean? Does that mean, for example, achieving, like Datuk Sri Najib gariskan $15,000 per capita GNI per annum to achieve high income nation?
But then, is that the goal? Or is it to ensure that maybe income distribution is much better? Or is it more of a Scandinavian model in which we create a welfare state where we tax people like 40%, but then we give free everything? So like, it's very vague, So like in the end, we ourselves will come up with the conception of what Wausan Loko is. And that's why I get back to the first point which I talked about, where I think we all remember, like, where our teachers asked, tolong lukis macam mana Malaysia will look like bila kita tiba Wausan 2020. And I always remember I will lukis macam kita terbang, bangunan-bangunan tinggi, lepas tu orang Melayu, Cina, India pegang tangan bersama. Itu kena colour biar macam, colour tu macam stereotype lah. Macam Melayu memang nampak macam brownish sikit, Cina ada yellow, macam memang betul lah, dah kecil dulu kan. So macam lepas tu kampung-kampungnya, kampung mesti ada kereta protokol saga dulu lah, protokol saga. Lepas tu kampungnya tiba-tiba macam banyak mesin lah. I remember doing all of that. And I also remember that all of this were actual suggestions. Macam banyak benda contoh, the concept of apa nama sekolah tu, sekolah wawasan or sekolah something yang which is more of a unity-based school. It was a product of discussions from Wawasan 2020. And up until today, that discussion is still there. About national schools, vernacular schools, religious schools, boarding schools. So I think it's a combination. So that's why when I hit back, to me, Wawasan 2020 is a mix. While we have defined goals, there's enough room for people to give opinions and suggestions so that we will realize those fundamental pillars which will make us a better nation. So when we look at TN50 in particular, so again as I mentioned, to me I prefer a bottom-up approach as well. But while we need a bottom-up approach, we also need defined goals. Why do I say this? Will ensure accountability. Dia akan pastikan accountability itu ada. So contoh, if for Wawasan 2020, we know that if race-based relations in Malaysia is still bad, that means kita gagal capai Wawasan 2020. If the poverty rate in Malaysia is still high, or urban poverty is high, we have failed to achieve Wawasan 2020. Because we already know the set, or at least the characteristics which will make us a successful nation as defined under Wawasan 2020. But under TN50, the defined goals are still not there, and it's everywhere. There are so many things, and I'm not sure how we will aggregate all the data and say, okay, in the end, ini adalah 20 perkara yang kita nak tekankan, ataupun 50, 100, 500 perkara yang kita nak tekankan, so that there can be genuine accountability. So, I agree with your statement, but I think I'll revert back to the statement I made before. I think the bottom-up approach is good and should be continued, but I think there should be a clear, defined timeline. So I think it should be next year. Like, then, what are the key goals? For example, these are 50 things. 50 perkara yang kita perlu capai bila kita tiba tahun 50. So we know that, for example, our generation in particular yang besar kemungkinan kita masih akan hidup lah bila tahun 50 nanti kan, that we must reach this. For example, ada yang kata kita perlu ada Perdana Menteri wanita bila dah tiba tahun 2050. I mean, if you ask me, I don't think we have to wait that long. If there's a credible, smart, intellectual woman, like Siti Khadijah, a successful businesswoman at the time of Prophet Muhammad, I think we can get that now. Why not? Maybe in the future we might have that. Who knows? So I think we can have that. So point is, these discussions, there must be macam KPI lah. I mean, KPI so that we can hold people accountable. We can hold Malaysians accountable to achieve that goal. So I think it must be a merger, a bottom-up approach in which we aggregate data and opinions, and when we get all those data collection, from there onward we translate it into public policy outcomes, and that public policy outcomes must be implemented as soon as possible. And that's why I say it's very important for young people to come together, regardless of their political differences, or if, for example, even if I'm in the opposition and some are in the government, for example, when I push for more youth representation in the opposition, then the government must do the same. Because if they don't, then the party will seem to not be youth friendly. But when I vote, I say, then opposition must do it as well. race to the bottom, but it's a race to the top, where like young people in the end will be represented a lot more because we translate words into public policy outcomes and we translate words into actual actions. So, I mean, I agree 100%. I just hope that in the short run, in the next 5 to 10 years, we will get the KPI.
Okay. Thank you very much for your answer. Does it answer your question? Yep. Okay. Thank you. Any more questions from the floor?
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Shazril. So my name is Shazril. So just one.
Fahmi, is it?
Shazril.
Shazri.
This is a big if the rakyat chose to change the government, for example, Pakatan Harapan taking over the government, so will the new government introduce a new policy which carries the same objective as the NFFT or was in the or do you guys will carry on with
Australia. He has experience in 16 years in the public sector, so because of this, he has great knowledge in governance and education as well. He leads many student organizations in Malaysia as well as overseas, and he holds a Bachelor of Arts in English Communication from University Science Malaysia, Master in Special Education from University of Buffalo, United States, and he is currently studying Doctor of Education at Griffith University. So without further ado, let's welcome Encik Muhammad Ali.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera yang saya hormati Fion Lai selaku moderator kita pada hari ini. Terima kasih kepada semua masih lagi bersama dalam sesi dialog DN50 dan saya ucapkan terima kasih kepada Tuan Penganjur di atas kesudian memberi peluang untuk saya dalam sesi soal jawab. Baik, salam sejahtera dan yang saya hormati kepada Ashley, Davina Anthony, Pengurusi Maska Chapter Queensland, Saudara Shazril, Pengurusi DPNQ, Saudara Hafizan, Pengurusi Hakim, Ipuang Koordinator Windsor Queensland, dan lain perwakilan pelajar yang saya hormati sekalian. Baik, dalam sesi ini saya ingin terangkan satu aspek yang penting itu tentang pendidikan sebab ialah connection kita dengan dunia nyata kita di sekolah. Barulah saya pada sesi soal jawab. Dan ada soalan-soalan yang berkaitan yang diajukan oleh Anas Alam Fazli atau Syed Sadiq Syed Abdul Rahman yang mana yang reflect pada saya pada konteks untuk saya jawab, saya boleh jawab. Maksudnya kamu fikir Abadi patut jawab soalan ini sikit. So, ambil soalan yang telah dikumpulkan yang saya akan cuba jawab sebaik mungkin. Dan prinsip saya di sini adalah tidak belah mana-mana sama ada sebelah kiri atau sebelah kanan. Prinsip adalah nawaitu saya untuk menerangkan kedudukan sebenar berasaskan pengalaman dan evidence yang cukup. Baik, mari kita lihat pertama sekali tentang kemahiran berfikir aras tinggi. Apa itu kemahiran berfikir aras tinggi? Adalah satu konsep definisi yang amat jelas. Okey, saya suka cakap bahasa Melayu. Is it everyone fine with that if I speak in bahasa? Okay, good. Kemahiran berfikir aras tinggi ini adalah komponen yang diangkat daripada segmen yang kita panggil Pelang Pembangunan Pendidikan Malaysia, satu inovasi. Jadi secara ringkasnya ada komponen tahap pemikiran. Jadi adik-adik sekalian di sekolah dulu memang kita nak nafikan cikgu-cikgu, guru-guru dalam pendekatan soal jawab, bukan sahaja chalk and talk, tetapi gunakan berbagai instrumen, berbagai teknik pengajaran pembelajaran. Tapi dalam kemahiran berfikir aras tinggi atau kebal menekankan aspek yang membentuk individu pelajar, bukan sahaja berfikir, tetapi komponen yang boleh mencipta, menilai, analisis, mengaplikasi, memahami dan menilai. Jadi bagaimana interaksi berlaku, kita lihat pada next slide. Next slide ini akan menjelaskan bagaimana kemampuan murid dengan guru adalah interaksi secara student based activity. Jadi kalau di sekolah, guru bukan lagi sebagai pengajar tetapi pemudah cara, moderator, sebagai penunjuk jalan. Selebihnya bergantung pada murid untuk berinteraksi dan membuat keputusan. Jadi ini lakaran yang sangat simple di mana susun atur bilik darjah yang terkini berdasarkan kebat terkandung dalam Pelan Pembangunan Pendidikan Malaysia adalah menekankan aspek interaksi guru dan pelajar. Jadi student based activity, susun atur bilik darjah berpesertakan murid, maka aktiviti memerlukan penaklukan, penyelesaian masalah dan mula-mula murid akan menerima maklumat dan terus berinteraksi melalui interaksi guru, pendidikan secara kreatif dan inovatif. Dan objektif pembelajaran ini adalah merangsang pemikiran secara berterusan. Baik, selepas itu akan berlaku pentaksiran formatif. Pentaksiran formatif akan membentuk pelajar dari segi kuis, aktiviti kuis, projek, modul dan sebagainya. Jadi ini sebahagian daripada kemahiran berfikir aras tinggi. Jadi kalau nak tahu lebih lanjut boleh lihat dalam www.moi.gov.my. Di situ tertera lengkap panduan kemahiran berasas tinggi. Okey, next slide. Saya ingin lihat pula kepada slide seterusnya adalah berkaitan dengan bagaimana kita melihat keberkesanan debat dalam bilik darjah. Ini adalah satu piawaian yang kita ukur apabila tanggungjawab guru adalah penting untuk merealisasikan debat dalam bilik darjah. Okey, komponen yang pertama kita lihat adalah bergantung kepada set tugas atau peranan guru. Dari segi praktiknya, pemikiran murid adalah bergantung kepada kecerdasan maklumat bagaimana dia berinteraksi melalui kertas kerja ataupun projek aktiviti melalui pola-pola peta. Sekarang kita menggunakan pola peta minda, brainstorming. So ada banyak pilihan. Jadi murid ini ada berbagai potensi. Dia boleh peta buih boleh, peta tipi boleh, peta pelbagai. Jadi dia ada konsep yang sangat unik dan sangat universal supaya murid ini dia boleh membangunkan, boleh menunjukkan potensi mereka dalam penyelesaian masalah. Okay, next. Berdasarkan pentaksiran, guru-guru akan melihat kepada instrumen yang bergantung kepada kekuatan murid dari segi pemerhatian pentaksiran dan aktiviti kerja seperti observation, persembahan projek, soal jawab, projek, amalan, kuis dan barang kerja. Jadi inilah pentaksiran yang akan menentukan sejauh manakah murid ini boleh memberikan respon-respon yang baik dalam aktiviti darjah, bukan saja akan menentu pencapaian presiden dalam peperiksaan. Jadi itu saja daripada saya tentang debat. Terima kasih Ayuni atas paparan. Seterusnya adalah berkaitan dengan soal jawab TN50. Jadi saya buka kepada soalan tuan-tuan dan puan-puan dan adik-adik. Soalan-soalan yang ingin dikemukakan, saya cuba jawab sebaik adanya. Terima kasih.
Assalamualaikum. Jadi saya punya soalan mengenai pelajar universiti di Malaysia. Sebagai seorang yang pernah buat research paper mengenai AUKU, dah tengok pasal AUKU, Akta Universiti College Universiti, saya mendapati bahawasanya antara sebab mengapa wawasan 2020 mempunyai pelaksanaan yang sangat lemah di kalangan pelajar universiti adalah kerana pelaksanaan pindaan tersebut yang mempunyai banyak guidelines, birokrasi dan sebagainya. So saya takut kalau benda ni akan menghalang pelajar universiti khususnya ITBA Malaysia untuk berfikir di luar kotak secara kreatif dan secara berinovasi. Dan saya mendapati bahawasanya memang pelajar-pelajar daripada sekolah menengah dan sekolah rendah amat kreatif dan berinovasi. Tapi bila mereka masuk ke universiti dan ITBA, mereka dikongkong oleh birokrasi dan maintenance sendiri. So soalan saya, adakah kita perlu mengekalkan perkara ini untuk sistem pendidikan dekat PhD nanti?
Soalan itu berkaitan dengan aplikasi amalan kita panggil siswa-siswi di universiti. Okey, kita lihat bahawa zaman berubah daripada tahun semasa ke semasa. Dan apa saya lihat bahawa ini ialah suara pelajar, terutama siswa-siswi ini, dia amat suara yang satu gelombang ombak yang besar, maknanya tidak boleh tahan. Walaupun kita lihat output ini terpatri dalam sistem universiti, dalam framework pelajar, sebenarnya dia adalah satu panduan. Kita tak boleh terus blame. So, sebagai pelajar yang kita panggil intellectual atau professional, kita perlu menghayati auku itu. Sebab auku itu menjadikan majlis pelajar yang menunjukkan suara dari aspek-aspek pembangunan saksian, pembangunan kendiri, pembangunan yang membentuk jasmani, emosi, rohani, intelek pelajar-pelajar tersebut. Aku itu satu garis panduan. Berlakunya pindaan adalah satu modifikasi tuntutan suara pelajar yang kita mahukan bahawa generasi kini, pelajar terutama di universiti, boleh tampil sebagai ikon akan datang. Jadi apa yang disuarakan itu ialah satu bentuk yang saya fikir sama-sama kita fahami si auku itu. Sebab auku itu dia bukan satu mandatory yang telah rigid. Dia ada flexibility yang tertentu. Sebab saya percaya semua universiti melihat bahawa kegemilangan universiti ini tertakluk kepada pencapaian pelajar bukan seperti akademik, tetapi kita melihat seperti penebat terbaik aset-aset tadi daripada universiti UIA. Jadi kalau dikatakan ruang itu kita lihat dalam sempit, bagaimana kita lihat kenyataan sekarang atau ternyata sekarang ramai pelajar yang boleh tampil sebagai penebat terbaik Asia, terbaik universiti atau tampil sebagai usahawan muda yang berkaliber. Jadi pendekatan dari segi bagaimana kita nak bahasa rasmi, bahasa formal, dan menggunakan bahasa rasmi formal ini adalah digalakkan ataupun diwajibkan bagi mana-mana situasi ataupun program ataupun dalam urusan kerajaan masih lagi menekankan tersebut. Dari segi penulisan, dokumentasi masih lagi kita mengutamakan bahasa Malaysia. Tetapi apabila mengambil kira interaksi verbal, kita lebih fleksibel. Bahasa Melayu ada superiority, tapi kita galakkan juga penguasaan bahasa kedua seperti bahasa Inggeris dan bahasa yang melibatkan bangsa asing seperti Tamil dan juga Melayu. Jadi apa yang sejak pada hari ini kita masih lagi mempertahankan mendaulatkan bahasa Melayu sepenuhnya dalam konteks urusan formal atau formality di negara.
Assalamualaikum kembali. Satu, tak dapat balik tentang soalan saya tadi. Kenapa Malaysia tak fokus kepada 3 tahun ni kepada wawasan 2020 capai remaining Nike challenges tu, and then lepas tu baru start activity kami start sekarang. Itu satu soalan. Pada yang dapat balik. Dan yang kedua saya nak tanya pasal sekolah berprestasi tinggi. Sebab ramai adik saya yang sekarang ni mereka terpaksa compete dengan ada students untuk masuk universiti. Bukan di sekolah menengah, saya cakap universiti yang sekolah rendah. So, kalau mereka tak boleh masuk universiti yang sekolah rendah, contoh saya bagi sekolah kebangsaan Bandar Baru Buddha, mereka terpaksa pergi ke sekolah yang lain. Adakah kerana bila mereka terpaksa pergi sekolah lain, mereka takkan dapat the same education sama dengan sekolah SPT? Ataupun sekolah SPT tu ada guru-guru yang cemerlang yang tak ada dalam sekolah lain. So macam it's not fair for them. They need to compete at a very early age, like 7 years old, to get their place in one of the SPT. Tapi kalau tak dapat, dia terpaksa masuk sekolah rendah lain yang mana tak nama SPT, tapi adakah mereka dapat edukasi yang sama macam SPT? Mungkin sekolah menengah okey, tapi bagi saya sekolah rendah macam lalu muda untuk orang compete, and then mereka gagal, mereka tak dapat edukasi yang sama.
Okey, untuk soalan pertama, ini boleh tengok slide sekali lagi. Okey, kita tengok proses involved of pergerakan setiap dasar kerajaan ini. Dia akan mengambil kira tempoh, dan bila pengusul tadi akan dibentangkan dalam parlimen bagi persetujuan dalam undang-undang dan sebagainya. Apa yang saya katakan bahawa wawasan 2020 itu adalah satu bentuk inspirasi, aspirasi yang telah diperkenalkan daripada awal menjadi panduan kita pada hari ini. Apabila kita nak menjelajah ataupun mendekati wawasan 2020, kita tidak nafikan bahawa kita harus menunggu melihat keberhasilan 2020 betul. Tetapi apa yang dilihat oleh negara kita pada kali ini ialah biarlah benda ini perlu ada satu persediaan awal. Apa yang kita bicara hari ini adalah satu tempoh yang memerlukan keseragaman dari segi konteks rintis. Kita panggil rintis ataupun kita panggil satu bentuk pengumpulan maklumat daripada tahun 2017, 2018 hingga 2019. Kemudian 3 tahun ini kita akan banyak membicarakan TNPT, barulah implementasikan, tekan, barulah akan satu bentuk dokumen yang publish, yang sahih, yang solid. Jadi kita tidak menafikan bahawa kita akan menunggu detik betul-betul. Cuma sebagai persediaan kepada selepas betul-betul apa terjadi, inilah kita punya tantangan. 2012, 18, 19, kita kamu perhatikan bahawa ada satu bentuk lagi yang jadi inspirasi rakyat negara selepas tahun 2020. Jadi masa ni nanti bila ada dokumen publish akan dinyatakan juga dalam belanjawan negara bahawa apakah yang telah dicapai dalam 9 cabang teras dalam pelaksanaan 2020 dan dokumentasi itu bukan sekedar dokumentasi tapi sekedar laporan yang jelas. Piawaian kita tetapkan dalam kawasan 2020, pencapaian semasa, pencapaian negara dan apakah kualifikasi kita sebagai negara maju atau tidak akan diumumkan dalam konteks yang lebih valid dalam konteks ini. Tetapi bagi saya, pandangan saya sebagai rakyat atau individu, dia adalah satu bentuk yang positif, satu yang bentuk yang membina. Di mana dah 3 tahun ini pencerainan maklumat, perkongsian idea, percambahan idea akan berlaku. Sebab macam konsep daripada bawah ke atas adalah satu bentuk suara yang sangat solid. Dan pada tahap 3 tahun ini kita akan nampak satu variable yang sangat menguntungkan kita. Kawasan 2020 ini akan menjadi pemacu kepada TNT. So dia bersaling kait dan juga saling ada connection antara satu sama lain. Bagi soalan kedua ialah sekolah berbasis tinggi itu adalah satu bentuk sekolah yang kita angkat dari segi kita panggil ada konsep niche area. Niche area maknanya sekolah itu kekuatannya bidang hasil utama sekolah itu adalah kebolehan dia adalah menghasilkan pelajar yang aktif dalam sukan bola sepak. Contohnya sekolah berbasis tinggi juga ada komponen yang telah diangkat kerana pentadbir yang cekap ataupun komponen yang lain adalah lihat kepada murid-murid yang adalah murid-murid yang adalah kalangan murid yang boleh menguasai 3M semua dalam bilik belajar. Apa soalan yang ditemukan tadi itu nanti ada letakkan instrumen menentukan layak tidak layak pelajar masuk itu adalah tingkat asas sebenarnya. Sekolah yang diletakkan sebagai sekolah SBT Joseph Tinggi ini dia ada dia punya standard tersendiri. Tetapi kita tidak nafikan bahawa ada sedikit kelebihan yang diperolehi dari segi jalinan penghubungan antara bangsa, dari segi pengususan program yang lebih dinamik berbanding sekolah biasa. Mungkin kalangan guru ke kalangan guru cemerlang, guru pakar dan sebagainya. Untuk mereka asas ini, maknanya kita dah letak satu starting point kepada pelajar, pada ibu bapa, bahawa anak-anak yang ingin masuk SPP atau sekolah kluster perlu memenuhi piawaian ini. Jadi kita dah serapkan daripada awal pendidikan prasekolah kebangsaan. Mana sebelum masuk ke sekolah yang standard, darjah 1 darjah 6, prasekolah kebangsaan akan menekankan aspek jasmani, ekonomi, intelek yang mana menentukan upaya pelajar untuk layak atau tidak. Tapi ini bukan satu kata finishing line, tidak. Sebab masih lagi diambil kira dalam konteks sekolah menengah. Pelajar yang ada potensi untuk diserapkan atau mohon untuk masuk, dia tidak ada halangan untuk dia belajar di sekolah yang pilihan dia. Sebab yang penting dia perlu memenuhi kriteria yang tertentu bagi mengekalkan image ataupun standard yang diberitakan oleh kementerian bahawa sekolah bersendiri perlu ada nilai, perlu ada nilai tambah dan sebagainya. Itulah peranan guru, peranan cikgu di sekolah bahawa pelajar itu seharusnya ada memiliki ciri-ciri kategori yang memenuhi kriteria sebagai watak etos sekolah sebagai sekolah berbasis tinggi. Jadi saya fikir ini tingkat kita panggil initial stage. Jadi kita jangan jadikan isu sebab belajar itu masih ada potensi masuk mana sekolah sebab kita tak arahkan mana-mana belajar dengan sidang pengetua dan pendidik untuk memastikan pelajar itu boleh mohon masuk ke sekolah-sekolah atas capaian, atas keyakinan beberapa untuk hantar sekolah berkenaan. Walaupun sekolah itu sekolah bersih tinggi, sekolah kluster itu adalah penjenamaan. Tapi bandingkan sekolah yang tidak ada sekolah kluster bersih tinggi, dia tetap memainkan fungsi yang sama. Dia menyediakan akses yang sama, kekuatan yang sama, guru yang sama, kemudahan murid yang sama, semua sama. Cuma pengelasan itu mungkin berbeza dari segi turunnya peruntukan itu lebih bagi memastikan tahap keupayaan sekolah yang diletakkan sebagai SPT atau sekolah kluster boleh mencapai standard tertentu. Mana kita ambil kira apa yang kita amalkan sama ini best practices di luar negara dan kita amalkan di dalam negara. Jadi apa yang saya lihat isu itu bukan isu yang besar. Maknanya kita harus lihat bagaimana connection kita, apa hubungan kita dengan sekolah. Dan ada kalanya bukan sekolah bersih tinggi pun kita boleh lihat. Sebab individu yang kita nak wakil kebat tadi dalam bilik belajar adalah satu proses di mana tanpa mengambil kira status sekolah ataupun branding sekolah, kita boleh bentuk, kita boleh bina satu yang luar biasa dalam bilik belajar dengan upaya kita belajar ataupun peranan guru dalam membentuk bagaimana inklusifnya pendidikan tanpa mengira status belajar. Kita perlu sama-sama melonjakkan posisi belajar dan belajar dengan amalan tepat tadi. Itu satu yang saya. Terima kasih.
Okay, thank you, Encik Muhammad Ali, for your speech as well as the Q&A session. I hope that you guys have learned plenty today from all the guest speakers and Muhammad Ali. So for now, it's time for the Circles of the Future section. So as you have been given one paper each person, so please fill them up. We only have 5 minutes for this. You can discuss in your table with your friends on like the ideas you guys have for TN50, and then after this, you can submit it to the committee. The facilitators will walk around and guide you guys if you have any questions, and if there's any questions you want, you can ask. These things that you submit today really plays a part, and don't think that this just goes to waste. Like, this is your contribution to TNP.
The best moment where you took now, you point out your view, boleh letak diri sebagai rakyat, bukan saja pelajar, tapi sebagai rakyat, sebagai individu di luar negara yang berpeluang belajar di luar negara, itu satu peluang untuk anda fungsikan pengalaman. Ada apa yang kita lalui, fungsikan ataupun luahkan. Itu satu pendekatan yang sangat realistik sebenarnya.
Okay guys, so we need to collect the paper soon. Sorry for the it feels a bit rushed, but don't worry, we'll post up the link soon on the event page. So if you have any more aspirations or ideas that you want to bring on, you can always fill it up online through the link. But we'll collect whatever you have now at the moment, because we really need to close the ceremony soon. Yeah. So Ashley and some of the committees will be walking around and collecting the papers. But if you have any more ideas, we will post up the link soon. Okay guys, before we close it off, I would like to invite Encik Muhammad Ali up here for the recognition. So, as a token of appreciation, we just bought like a small chocolate box. May I have a photographer to